is a old Pioneer SA 7800. And if I had to guess, I'd say this thing was from the late 70s. I picked this thing up a couple of years ago at a flea market and brought it home and fired it up, and it was working well. I don't know if it's plugged in right now. No, it's not plugged in, but it fired up. It worked fine for a couple hours, and then just quit on me. It went into protection mode, and that was it. And put it on the shelf, and hadn't fired it up since until a couple of days ago. And miraculously, it did not repair itself while it sat on the shelf. So I'm going to have to take a look at that unit. And then, alright, so I've got the cover off the amplifier here, and I managed to get it to come out of protection mode just by kind of tapping around on it. Just with the cover off, I had it on, and I was just tapping the bottom of the circuit board, and it came out of protection mode. But what I'm realizing here, and you can see that on the meter, there's a little bit of noise on the channels. Even with the volume completely down, you can hear some noise coming from the speakers. There's a humming and occasionally some popping. And it's not real loud, and it doesn't get any louder than that even when you turn the volume up. So my initial thought was that, well, you know, this thing's old, it's been sitting around. You know, I thought maybe I should clean all the switches and potentiometers and things. So after cleaning the switches and not really solving the problem, my next thought was that maybe I've got some bad capacitors in here. And so I started looking a little closer at the component side of the board. And what sort of jumped out as obvious once I started looking at things was that the cover on the protection relay is completely missing. So I'm suspecting that the previous owner had this problem with this unit and had thought maybe they could clean the relay contacts somehow, and took the cover off of the relay and never replaced it, or maybe broke it in the process. Alright, it's time to get back working on the stereo project here after a week or two hiatus. When I last left it, I had started to do some cleaning. For this project, I'm not going to take the whole thing apart and do a real thorough cleaning, but I am going to try and get at what I can. And so far, I've tried to get most of the dust and grime out of it. I think there's still a little more work to do, but it's fairly well clean now. And I've even gone so far as to use some metal polish here on like the rear connectors and things to try and get those cleaned up. And I'll probably go over everything again, but I've gone through and done a cursory clean here just so that I can start replacing capacitors without a bunch of dirt and grime in my way. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take a look, I think, at the power supply board. Now I've ordered all of the capacitors for this unit except the 4 big filter caps on the power supply. I just didn't have a whole lot of money to spend on this project, so I left these out of the order since the 4 of these cost more than the rest of the capacitors put together. Maybe before I'm done I'll go back and replace these, but for now these are going to stay stock. Okay, pulled the first couple capacitors out of the power supply board, and I just wanted to show that they were a little tricky to get out because there was some material here kind of staking them down to the board. So unsoldering them wasn't too bad, but getting this stuff to separate was a little tricky. I just had to work at it a little bit. And then you can see here, well, there's where one of the capacitors was, and then the other one was down here. One was here and one was here. So I guess now it's on to the rest of the caps on this board. Okay, so I've got all the capacitors replaced, of course, except the big ones. Like I said before, those just weren't in the budget right now. I'm taking a look at the protection relay here now, and for whatever reason, when this amplifier came to me, this protection relay was missing its cover. I'm not sure if the previous owner was having trouble with some of the noise that I'm experiencing, and they thought maybe they could clean the relay and that would fix it, or something along those lines. But anyway, I've removed this relay, and I think I've ended up damaging it a little bit in the process. It wasn't the easiest thing to remove. But anyway, here's the new relay that I've sourced, and just like with the capacitor information, I found information about what relay to use on audiokarma.com, and this relay will fit into the board, and you can see there I need to clean those pads up a little more still, but it'll fit into this pattern. However, if you take a look at the relay, the pins on this side of the relay, pins 1, 2, 3, and 4, as stamped on the bottom here, I'm going to need to cut those, and those are, I guess, what you'd call the normally open pins. I don't know how visible that is there, but you can see that in the resting position, the contacts of the relay are touching those pins, and in this circuit, when the relay is open, there's no other functionality, it's just open, and there's no holes in the board for those pins. So in order to fit this in, we're going to have to clip those pins, or at least bend them out of the way, and then the rest of it should drop in and be an exact replacement. Okay, so I've got the relay soldered in, and I actually ended up bending the pins instead of cutting them. Just something about cutting them felt too permanent, just in case something didn't work. But anyway, pins are bent and everything is soldered in. So this power amplifier board now, of course now it's in the shadow of my light, but is all recapped, and there's the new relay in place, and ready to go.